Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Vegan Spirituality online gathering. My name is Lisa Levinson, and I am the director of the Sustainable Activism Campaign for In Defense of Animals. And Judy Carmen and I, my co-host, she's the author of Peace to All Beings. The two of us co-host this meeting every month. And the purpose is to explore veganism as a spiritual practice. And we do this together online, but we also do this as part of many groups who meet across the country in different states, different cities to explore veganism as a spiritual practice. And they do so by having potlucks, having speakers, going to vigils, doing various things together to explore what does this mean, the deeper meanings of being vegan and spiritual, and how they intertwine. So it's my pleasure to take this opportunity and introduce my co-host, Judy Carmen, who will introduce our featured speaker today. We'll have an interview, and I'm looking very forward to our special guest today.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, here I am, everybody. It's so good to have you with us, and we're very excited because we've got Will and Madeline Tuttle with us, and most of you have probably heard of them, and they're huge leaders in making a vegan world come true. Dr. Will Tuttle is a noted composer and pianist and visionary author of the acclaimed Amazon #1 bestseller, The World Peace Diet, which I imagine most of you have read. It's been published in 16 languages. He's also the recipient of the Courage of Conscience Award, as well as the Empty Cages Prize, and many others. It would take the whole hour to tell you everything, more than that, really. He's also co-creator of Vegan Palooza, one of the largest online vegan events ever, and creator of several wellness and advocacy training programs, including the World Peace Diet Facilitator training course. He's also the author of Your Inner Islands, The Keys to Intuitive Living, and the editor of the book Circles of Compassion, Connecting Issues of Justice, which focuses on the interconnection of social justice issues. A vegan since 1980, he is a frequent radio, television, and online presenter and writer. He is featured in the acclaimed documentary film Cowspiracy, which I hope everyone has seen, but if you haven't, you must see it and share it. He's also been in a bunch of other documentaries. One is Vegan Everyday Stories, one is Hope for All, and then Animals and the Buddha. He's taught college courses in philosophy, humanities, mythology, religion, and creativity. A former Zen Buddhist monk and Dharma master in the Korean Zen tradition, he has created 8 CD albums of uplifting original piano music. With his spouse Madeline, a Swiss visionary artist, he presents extensively throughout North America and worldwide at college campuses, spiritual centers, conferences, and peace, social justice, and animal rights, health, and environmental gatherings. And I just want to add that Will and Madeline and I go back a ways. We founded the Circle of Compassion and the Worldwide Prayer Circle for Animals. You can see more at worldpeacediet.com, and there are other websites also that Will can tell us about. So Will, welcome. So good to see you. And we'll just start out with my first question, which is about these 2 new documentaries about spirituality and veganism, which is right down our alley. So tell us about them and how you foresee us as vegan activists being able to use these films to help people see the connection between veganism and spirituality.
Hey, thanks so much, Lisa and Judy, for the work you're doing to help make the connections between veganism, spirituality, and world peace. And your question is about these 2 new documentaries that are just being made. One of them I think is called, gosh, Compassion, what's it called? One by Thomas.
Compassion Project.
Compassion
Mm-hmm.
Project, right.
Thomas. Yep.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
the other one, I guess, is the one being made by Kip Anderson. Is that what you mean? That one? Um,
Yes.
yeah, I don't know a whole lot about Kip's project. I think it's a little bit of a secret, but but as you know, Kip also went through our training back in 2011, and he's made Cowspiracy and What the Health. I think he's a fantastic filmmaker, and his films, I think, are enormously powerful because he's a master, I think, really, at just speaking his own truth and following wherever it leads in a very authentic way. And I think this third one, he told me we just spent time with him a couple of days ago in Arizona and did some filming. And this one he says is the one that's closest to his heart. And when he went through the World Peace Diet training, he told me during the training and afterwards, we were in touch actually quite a few times, that he wanted to make a film about the World Peace Diet. And I think Cowspiracy, What the Health, and this new film are kind of a trilogy about the World Peace Diet, in the sense that it's good, giving the big picture, I think, together, of the consequences of animal agriculture in our society, how it's damaging the environment, how it's damaging our physical health, and now with the new film, how it's damaging our psychological and spiritual health, and the ethical dimension, which he thinks is the most important part of it. And I agree. I think this is really the most critical part. These other parts are, it's very important to be healthy physically and to have a healthy world. But when we look at how animal agriculture, meat and dairy products and so forth, how that damages our societal health, our our psychological, spiritual, and ethical health, then I see the huge damage that animal agriculture is doing. And so I can't really say anything about how his film's going to turn out, but I think he's definitely a powerhouse when it comes to making films. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it. And the one by Thomas, I think the Compassion Project, from what I've seen, the trailer, it looks terrific. I think we were the first one he interviewed on this project back when he was first starting. And to me, it's a very pure vision of connecting with what compassion actually is, showing that at a deep level, each one of us has a capacity for empathy and kindness. And when we're raised in a society based on animal agriculture, that basic capacity is reduced, and we're forced to eat animal foods and forced to suppress what I refer to in the World Peace Diet as the sacred feminine dimension of consciousness, which is that part of our being that naturally yearns to love and protect life. And animal agriculture is about the opposite. It's about sexual abuse, about imprisonment, about mutilation and killing, and cultivating a cold-heartedness and an attitude of not caring. All of these qualities that animal agriculture engenders in us and encourages in us are the antithesis of spirituality. Spirituality is a word that has a lot of shades of meaning, and I think a lot of people don't like the word spirituality because they think it reminds them of religion, and they don't like religion. A lot of vegans especially don't like religion because religions have been used to enable animal agriculture and to enable violence. And so I think it's important to make a distinction that authentic spirituality is based on a direct understanding of the interconnectedness of all life, and that what we are is not merely matter, that what we are is eternal consciousness, or what we are is an expression of eternal consciousness, each one of us. And all expressions of life are expressions of eternal consciousness. And when we understand that rationally, but I think beyond rationally, when we understand that intuitively, then within us is born a direct sense of I guess the word is relatedness, or a sense of wanting the best for others, because we see that we're all expressions of the same life. So the sense of kinship, I guess, is part of it. And this questioning of the narrative of materialism, to me, is really the core teaching of veganism and of spirituality. This is where the link really is. And so I think it's important for us in the vegan movement to embrace spirituality. And I think it's really important for people on any kind of a spiritual path to embrace veganism because they support each other. So hopefully these two films will nurture that understanding and help our society to move in a direction toward authentic spirituality, toward creating a society of compassion and awareness, and also going vegan. Which, as I'm saying now quite a bit, I think it's important to realize that veganism is not veganism. When we say veganism, very often people say, oh, that's a category. I'm either a vegan or I'm not a vegan. Some people are, some people aren't. And it creates these divisions. And even though it's a great word, it does, create these categories, which I think can be counterproductive. It also has this idea that it's some kind of a new idea. Veganism is this new word created in 1944. And I experienced being a Zen monk in Korea, living in a community that had been practicing what we would call veganism for 800 years. And I can see that it goes back probably several thousand years at least. So it's a wisdom tradition. There's an ancient word in Japanese, shojin, which means the spiritual practice of eating a plant-based diet, for example. That's an ancient word that probably goes back 1,000 years. And we could say we're practicing veganism or we're practicing shojin. We're practicing compassion as a spiritual practice and also as a practice of social harmony and a practice of health on every level. So I think more of this, instead of having labels that can divide people, to realize that we're all doing our best to practice something that will bring more harmony and joy and health into our world, and that the practice of eating a plant-based diet and also plant-based living, not buying and wearing fur and silk and wool and products tested on animals and going to the zoos and rodeos and all these things, this is all in the same general direction. And I think these two new films are hopefully, as I see it, will again do something similar to what your books have done and what the vegan spirituality movement is doing and what my books are doing, which is to just shed light on these connections. And we need this light, I think, more than anything right now.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, and we'll all be able to use those films, I think, by sharing them and getting as many people as
Right.
we can to watch them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just keep spreading the word, and these are great resources. I think books,
Yeah.
audio recordings, video recordings, anything we can do that will help people to assimilate the information and the inspiration and the education. That's the key. I think there's three main things we need to do. One is education, the second is education, and the third is education. Now, this is the thing. It's all about education. And really, the only reason we're eating animal foods is because we've been educated, or I should say miseducated, to think we need to eat animal foods to be healthy. And now it's time to sort of unlearn that miseducation. And the good news is we have this wonderful alternative, which is delicious food like you have experience with Madeline's cooking, and I have too. We can eat, delicious plant-based foods and be much healthier that way, actually.
Right. Well, speaking of Madeline, I was hoping that she could maybe share a little bit about your worldwide tour, which you all finished not too long ago, 9 months going around the world with little backpacks and speaking almost every day in different countries. So tell us all about it. Hi, Madeline. So tell us about the worldwide tour. Your sound's off. Will? I can't hear Will.
England, and
There you
then
go.
India,
Yeah, I can hear
and
you.
then over to China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and then to Hawaii. So it was an around the world, sort of circumnavigation of the world, and to help veganize our society. And yeah, I think it was quite an adventure, actually, and we met a lot of beautiful vegan activists and advocates in cities all over the world.
Yeah, and also the different cultures and how the vegan lifestyle arrived, I mean, was taken, was very interesting and very different between India or China or Taiwan. Taiwan, who is the most vegan place nearly on earth, I think.
Yeah, we always actually love going to Taiwan because they're so on board with
Hmm.
veganism. The whole culture is, and the Buddhist influence is so strong, and the Buddhist monks are virtually all vegans, both the males and the females, and they're always educating the people of the importance of vegan living. And so like when people in the West, like when we go to Europe sometimes, and you also hear in North America, they say, well, don't talk about spirituality, only talk about veganism. We don't want to hear about the spirituality. And when we go to India and China and
Yeah.
Taiwan, it's so obvious that veganism and spirituality go together. And these people really love making the connection between spirituality, meditation, veganism, because they've been doing that for hundreds of years, and they understand that when the mind is disconnected from its source and is floundering around in delusion, that's when we eat animal foods. And when the mind comes back home to our true nature and we look with eyes that see clearly, we're not going to be killing animals for food. We're not going to be eating dairy products. And so they understand that, and it's kind of funny how in the West we're so wounded. That's what Madeline says. We can't talk about spirituality in some of these countries, especially in Europe, because they just are allergic to anything about spirituality or
Yeah.
religion.
Anything about God or
Right,
the
divine
church
or
or something, they go far away.
right. But the neat thing actually in these Eastern religions is that really there isn't any God anyway, right? I mean, in Buddhism, in Taoism, in Jainism, in Confucianism, in most forms of Hinduism, there's no God. They're religions that are non-theistic, which people in the
Mhm.
West, we can't even imagine that. We think there's got to be a God if we're going to have a religion, but that's not
Mm.
true. And so these are more systems of cultivation of qualities that are beneficial for society and for ourselves. They're about awakening. They're about psychological growth and purification and uh, and the adventure of exploring consciousness. So they're very positive. They're really about questioning everything. I mean, Zen, for example, is about questioning everything. So I don't know how anyone could have anything against that. I mean, I guess they don't understand. They think it's about indoctrination, but the founders of these religions they're totally opposed to indoctrination. They're saying get out of the ruts you're in and smell the beautiful breeze and have love in your hearts and celebrate your life and be creative. That's what an authentic religious tradition should be doing, and that's what these traditions really do say at the core. And so we learned a lot about that, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like we could really go there and visit and bring the vegan message and be also creative with the music and the art. And it was all very well received. And then the spirituality. So we felt it was a wholeness there.
Yeah, yeah, they love, I mean, every single place in China, for example, they always had a good piano
Yeah.
on the stage. And they really loved making the connection with the piano music and then having Madeline play the flute and then showing her paintings and then having the discussion about vegan living and compassion for animals, that this all goes together. And I think it was very affirming to us about the path and the approach that we've taken. The World Peace Diet approach to veganism is based not on criticism or judgment or blame or anything like that, or trying to tear down a system. It's really based on awakening to an understanding of the core nature of our society, realizing that we're born into a culture that's organized around herding animals, seeing that that's completely just nonsensical today. I mean, it's completely counterproductive. And it's so great to go to these other cultures, like to China especially, and also to Korea, Singapore, Vietnam, Hong Kong, Taiwan, all these cultures, they pay us. I mean, they want us to come and bring that message and, support us, to do that and to share this message with the people in their society because they understand. And in fact, even the Chinese government has taken probably the leading role in the world in mandating that everyone reduce the amount of meat they're eating by 50%. That's the government. So government, the science, the ancient traditions, they're all agreeing, and it's a tremendous positive movement. It's a big movement. There's huge movements over there to bring veganism, and it's wonderful to see the ancient roots. Like when we went to Juhu, which is a city just south of Beijing, that's the foundation city of Confucianism, and we never thought Confucianism was a big vegan stronghold, but it is, because Confucianism is really based on harmony with nature and with animals and with each other. And so it was great when we went there and we could, not only did we go to the place where there's sort of the World Heritage Site, but we also went to a community where they have about 4,000 acres of land. They've put millions of dollars into building buildings and creating an actual vegan community with vegan agriculture, without any fertilizer that's chemical, without any bone meal, blood meal, no manure. Everything's vegan. They grow their own food. They're building this wonderful hall, I guess a place for people to retire and live in a vegan community in their retirement. And they're building schools for kids that are vegan. And we went to a Buddhist temple that had vegan schools for the children, and they had a vegan sanctuary also affiliated. So there's a lot of harmony. Like we have this idea in the West that you're either a Christian, or you're a Muslim, or you're a Jew, or you can't be both. You can't be all at once. You have to be one or the other. They're all kind of fighting each other, in a sense. And over there, Buddhists, Taoists, Confucian, they're all this one temple. It was all three. They said we honor all three. There's no conflict. They see that they're basic wisdom traditions that all have something to contribute. And I think there's so much more basic sanity, really, in these societies that people can draw upon. It's not that they're perfect or anything, but there's China's where veganism started, about, probably 1,500 years ago, in the sense that the temples invented the vegetarian alternatives like vegan chicken and vegan pork and so forth to give to the people who are donating to the temples, because the monks themselves were eating a totally plant-based diet. They weren't. I noticed that when I was a monk in Korea. There was no meat or dairy or eggs or silk, wool, leather. This is a way of living that's based on meditation. So it was very affirming to travel. But India was interesting because it was the first time, really, that veganism is actually being brought to India. I think it's very vegetarian, but veganism was pretty new. Remember the feeling we had?
Exactly. But what I like saying about that place, Juhu, it's so beautiful. We took a walk with one of the guys who lived there, and they're so grateful for the land and for the different trees. One can feel the love they have and how they make things from scratch. They actually fabricate their own noodles from millet, like millet noodles. And this was so delicious. And eat very simply, a little bit of daikon, a little bit of noodles in a soup, in a watery soup, and pumpkin. And this was the meal, and it was so tasty because the veganic farming is so much more aromatic. It's different. One can feel the fulfillment when one eats that. So I liked adding this.
Yeah, that's really true, and the food just seems so wholesome. And like Madeline says, the relations, the respect that people had for each other, for the place, all these trees everywhere had these words on them. They were in Chinese, so I couldn't read them very well. But I asked them, well, what does that what is that word? What is that word? And every tree had a word on it, and the words were like harmony, love,
Yeah.
freedom, joy, kindness, and so forth. And it's really neat to see that anyone can move there, can live there. It's open community, a vegan community, and I think it's very inspiring to see that spirituality can create a foundation for vegan community that lasts for hundreds and really thousands of years and brings sanity and healing to the society. And I think it's really important to see that vegan spirituality is the pathway to a world for our children that's viable. And without vegan spirituality, I don't think we have any way, because we're not rational, logical people. If we were rational and logical, everybody would go vegan. But people, cling on to eating meat and dairy because we're so wounded, and we just want to fit in whatever society we're born into. And even if it means stabbing animals and eating flesh and eating mammary secretions of other horribly abused animals, we'll just do anything to be part of a group. It's crazy, but that's how we are. We're so tribal. And so to create a whole system that's based on deeper wisdom and truths, and to see that this has been done by the Buddha and by the followers of these traditions, and it's still intact, and it's still enlightening people, actually. It's still being a very positive force in the world. I think it's an important thing to be aware of, and I think if we can create more vegan spiritual movements, like we were just in Phoenix, there's a church there. They meet every Sunday morning, and it's a vegan church, and I think that's just a great thing to have an actual vegan church meeting on Sunday mornings, and that's the main thing is veganism. And there was also Zen nights there in Phoenix, where the fourth Friday of every month, they close off a whole block right in downtown Mesa, Arizona, and it's all devoted to vegan food and vegan products and vegan lectures and so forth, right in downtown. It's called Zen Nights, based on the idea of Zen being a path of meditation, of awareness, of living in harmony with nature and with each other. And this is an antidote, I think, to the toxic society that we're all born into. It's based on violence against animals and against the feminine. And so I think that to develop a wholesome understanding of what true spirituality can actually inspire in a society is really important today. So that's that. In our travels, we just saw so many examples of this, and I think in India, again, it was the Jains very often who have the basic teaching of ahimsa, which is also really the core of all the world religions. They did amazing work. We were in the city of Surat, where they had over 800 people come to our lecture, and they really, just paid for everything, get this word out there. They started a vegan community, a vegan meetup group, and created television and radio and newspaper outreach with the message. And they're just so enthusiastic and so open to the message, even though, like this one guy, the main organizer, he was a Jain, and like most Jains, he was eating some dairy. And so we said to him, all right, so now I guess, so how long have you been a vegan? Because he organized this whole thing for 800 people promoting veganism. And he said, today is my first day. It's this great, spirit of just, I'm going to start it now. And these people, and it's great, like you said, the World Peace Diet's been translated into 16 languages, and now, they're translating it into their language, into Gujarati, into Tamil, into Hindi, into all these languages in India, to get the vegan message to come in India more. And I think this kind of volunteer grassroots spirit of enthusiasm to help uplift our world for the benefit of all of us is really the most precious resource. This is the key. We come to this earth. What are we going to do while we're here? Are we going to just try to get something for ourselves and just pay money to cut down forests and destroy rivers and pollute the oceans, and then we die and we go and we just came here and ruined everything a little bit? That's what most people do. We come here and what do? We ruin everything a little bit and then we go. If we're not making a positive impact, really, I think if we're not living in a vegan way, a way based on compassion and kindness for others, and it's not our fault. We're just basically programmed to live this way. We're programmed to be consumers and to see our life as based on materialism and based on what we can get for ourselves. And really, spirituality is an antidote to that. Spirituality is saying, no, you're not just a material thing, just here to consume. You're consciousness. And after you leave your body, how you lived your life is going to matter then too. And this is something that's absolutely covered over in a materialistic society based on herding animals, where all we do is see them as meat, and then we see ourselves as meat. And when large corporations have everybody thinking of themselves just as meat, this is an object that was born and will die, just a physical body, then what's the purpose of our life? It becomes to consume, just to get stuff for ourselves. This is slavery. This is delusion and slavery. And so we really need the ancient wisdom traditions, and we need our own experience of the truth that we are, which means to take time out of our busy schedules and just sit, just turn our attention within and listen, not do something, just be, and take time to just be and just listen and just experience that we are nature. We are nature. People say that they feel disconnected from nature, and we do in our society. It's because we're disconnected from ourselves. We're driven by the technology that we have, which is so destructive in many ways, and by the food and the mentality of our food, which is disconnectedness. So these are very healing powers, and it's kind of ironic, we have to meet like this on a computer, and we have to get in airplanes and go to these other countries. This is kind of the irony, but that's part of the path. This is where we are, so we use the tools that we have, but we have to use the tools in a way to go beyond the tools. That's the idea. Like in Buddhism, they say, use the teachings to go beyond the teachings. Use your mind to go beyond your mind. That's the key. We have to use this life we have on earth to go beyond this life we have on earth. That's the challenge. We have to use it to go beyond. And we have to use everything at our disposal to go beyond what we have at our disposal and to directly experience life at a deeper level. And that's something no one can do for somebody else. No one can do it for anybody else. We have to do it ourselves, I think. And so we got a taste of that, I think. These beautiful people that we met in all these different traditions and different places. It's really great. Vegans are vegans in general. It's great because we feel this kinship when we travel. Like we go to another country, and even though we don't speak the same language, but we're all vegans, and so we know we have this in common. It's like a big family because there's an underlying unity in our aspiration. We really felt that.
Yeah.
With the people that we were meeting, and so I think that it's important to realize, anyone who's on this path, that there's a lot of other people out there who really understand the spiritual dimension and are interested in this. And in the West, it can be very dry. We can be here in the West, in the United States or Europe, and as vegans, we can go to a progressive church, like maybe a Unitarian or a Unity or whatever, or whatever church, different types of churches and things, and they're always eating meat and chicken and fish, and we feel, oh man, or even going to the yoga studio very often, or to a meditation group, and they're still eating meat and dairy, and so it can be very frustrating and disheartening. But so that's why it's so nice to go sometimes in other countries and where it hasn't been so diluted. I think when spiritual teachers come to the West from the East, very often they give up a lot of the Eastern wisdom when they come here, and they say they want to be successful in marketing their yoga or their meditation, and they start eating meat or telling their students, yeah, go ahead, and it's no problem. And so it really is a problem. And it's good to see now that veganism is getting stronger in the yoga communities and in the various meditation and spiritual communities. And even I think in some of the more progressive, and even some of this, actually even some of the, I think, more traditional religions, there is an awakening happening that how we treat animals really does matter. So that's a good sign.
Oh, good news. Well, and that kind of leads me into the next question. I want you to tell us about your new book, Your Inner Islands, The Key to Intuitive Living. Madeline, thank you so much.
She's,
What?
this is it right here. If you want to have a look. um, Your Inner Islands. It's got Madeline's painting on the cover, and also some of her artwork on the inside. But the Your Inner Islands: The Keys to Intuitive Living is a book that goes into the main ideas, how we can develop our spiritual intuition, and it's, I think, very much related to veganism in the sense that I think most people, when we go vegan, some people do it, I think, sort of logically, rationally, but most people do it because of a feeling or because of an awakening. They suddenly realize that what they're eating is a who. They're eating someone, not something. As you so beautifully say, Judy, in some of your prayers. And I think, this intuition that we have, this inner wisdom, is repressed in our society. So when I was getting my PhD at Berkeley back in the 80s, in education, I really wanted to do my dissertation and my research on intuition. And I was so fortunate, I think, to find some people there who agreed and said, sure, go ahead. And my dissertation was actually nominated as the best dissertation at Berkeley that year, but it was a very dry academic dissertation. And so some people have read it, but I think this new book is much more approachable and much more engaging. And it's a story where you go from this shore to the other shore on this journey and across the ocean. This show representing where I am right now in my life, and the other show representing the fully developed intuitive potential. And there are these 6 islands on the journey: the island of various things, like the island of understanding, the island of meditation, the island of energy, the island of relationship, the island of imagination, the island of compassion. And each of the islands has teachings about intuition and exercises. And there's a CD that goes with it with music and some of Madeline's paintings for some of the exercises. So it's kind of an audio-visual, hands-on intuition development book. And it's not directly about veganism, but it's very much about veganism in the sense that it's about broadening our heart and our mind to include all expressions of life, and then deepening our understanding of the quality of our consciousness to see that when we quiet our mind, we begin to realize that we're all expressions of the same life. And when we connect with the energy of our true nature, we begin to realize that there are many other dimensions of ourselves that we are perhaps out of touch with, that we have been told in our society that we're just this thing, this biochemical machine, kind of a computerized machine, and that it's all based on evolution and sort of random mutations and all this kind of stuff. And to realize that what we are is it's like we're a TV set, and what's a TV set? If someone was to watch a TV who had never seen a TV before, they would think that the program that they're watching on the TV was just coming right from that television, right? That's coming right from there. They wouldn't have any idea that it's broadcast from thousands of miles away, and the TV is just a receiver. And it's the same thing, I think, with our physical body and our brain and so forth. We think that our brain is creating our thoughts and our body is just who we are. And we don't realize that what this physical vehicle is, in many ways, it's like a TV set in the sense that it's a receiver. And who we are is in a completely other dimension. Who we are is eternal and transcendent. And so transpersonal, essentially. Persona, personality comes from the old Greek word that means mask. We have this mask that we put on, that we present to the world, and people think, that's who we are. That's not who we are. That's just a mask. You can't see the being. You can't see me right now. Whoever's waving, that's definitely not me. That's not who we are. That's just a footprint. And from the Buddhist point of view, that's just like a footprint in the sand. The being that made the footprint, you'll never find them in the grains of sand of this footprint. And the same thing with the cells of our body is a footprint. You'll never find the being by looking into the cells of the body. That's ridiculous. But we live in such a diluted society. We're taught that that's who we are, and the science, so-called science of our society, labors under this ridiculous delusion of materialism. And I think we're starting to see breakthroughs. I read a while ago some stuff by Bruce Lipton, who tells this great story. He's a famous biologist now, but he talks about how he was looking for life in the cells, and suddenly he realized that there's no life in the cells. They're receivers, actually, and that the messages and codes in the DNA come from far away. And I think this is the frontier of science and religion. They're both essentially wounded in our societies. I talk about in the World Peace Diet by materialism. And I think what veganism is essentially is a healing of that wounding of materialism, and it's helping us to connect with our own inner wisdom as individuals. So this is not something that's going to come, I don't think, from outside of us. We shouldn't be depending on outside authorities to confer some kind of new great culture upon us. That we have to change it ourselves. We have to create a grassroots movement. I think that's what we're doing. We're called to become, as Gandhi said, the change that we would like to see in the world. And instead of being part of the problem, to be part of the solution. And I think that means marrying within ourselves, like the word yoga means to yoke or to join within ourselves, the parts that have been harmed. We've been harmed, we've been disconnected, we've been kind of shattered by being raised in this society. We've turned ourselves into an object. We have to sell ourselves on the market. We have this mask that we have to present to the world. We eat foods very often that are not in our best interest. A lot of our thoughts are not our thoughts. They're thoughts that have been injected into us by advertising and by powers that really don't have our interests actually in mind. So it's really about reclaiming our own consciousness. And it takes time to do that. It takes discipline, and it takes working every day to really become aware of the thoughts that I'm thinking. Are they really my thoughts, or is this really what my parents thought, or my teachers thought, or my minister thought, or the Walmart ads told me that, or the doctor said, these are all potentially very toxic and harmful. So to connect with our own inner wisdom and question the narrative, question the media, question everything in the outer world. And that's why I love what you're doing, Judy and Lisa, to create this alternative narrative based on looking into ourselves as the source of wisdom and understanding and how we can be healthy. I think that's really the key thing. So that's what intuition is. Essentially, it's taking a big picture, looking at the biggest possible picture, seeing the interconnectedness of all life, realizing that we only have a few short years on this earth, and to use these years in the most, what can I say, the most valuable way possible, I guess, the most meaningful way possible. Don't allow ourselves to get distracted. Don't allow our journey to be hijacked by people that want to make us into mere consumers, and to discover our true nature and to celebrate our life on this beautiful earth as we're intended to.
Well, thanks, Will. And I really want to encourage everybody to read the book and use it and use the exercises in it. I've read it and I'm getting ready to read it again. I think it's going to be one of those things that teaching things that can help us move past a lot of the grief that we have as animal activists and the compassion fatigue, because this will take us beyond that. I think we should move on to the next question. We've got a little bit of time left, and I know we want a little time for questions, But we did want to talk a little bit about some of the troubling issues that have been rising in the movement, and the animal rights movement, including some of the new sexual harassment charges. And so I would love to hear your take on that. What are some of the things we could all do to bring about less domination and more cooperation in the movement?
Yeah, that's a great question, Judy. And I've been talking about this for years, not directly though, but sort of indirectly, that I think what veganism is essentially is questioning all of our actions. And it's very easy to move our lives in a positive direction toward veganism, which is basically not eating animal foods and so forth. But and then to think that okay, now I'm done. I'm a vegan. I'm finished. I'm pretty much perfect now, and so I don't have to worry about changing myself anymore. What I need to do is go out and change other people, because we're not going to have a planet if people keep eating meat and dairy. People in the vegan movement, I've seen it. I mean, I've been in this movement for 40 years. Get hysterical, and understandable. You know, you're cutting down the rainforest at an acre per second. We're destroying the oceans. Animals are being slaughtered, tortured, killed. People are starving. You know, we got to do something. We got to do. And I don't have time to work on myself. I got to get out there and protest and change people. And I think what we don't realize in this movement is if we're not working actively on purifying ourselves, that our so-called activism can be causing maybe more problems, in a sense that we're not deeply living what veganism is, which is basically kindness and respect for all animals, including human animals. So if we get angry and feel that people who are eating meat and dairy products and eggs, for example, are the enemy, and we have to either change them or get rid of them, or shock them, or something like that. It's almost like we have this energy in our heart of exclusion, which is understandable because we've been born into a culture where we've been harmed. And if we've healed ourselves enough to go vegan, that's great, but that doesn't mean the healing is finished. So I think what the key here is to realize that the real battle, in a sense, it's like in the Bhagavad Gita, it's an inner battle. We're here, there's no outer enemy. The only enemy is ourselves, actually, our own programming. And the only one I can change really is myself. If I can transform myself, then I'll be much more capable of blessing the world. And so I think it's a little bit an indication. I don't mean this in any kind of a criticism, but I think it's somewhat of an indication that the people who were mostly, in a sense, working to create the movement, the animal liberation movement, the animal protection movement, to be more of a marketing movement. More about how do we package the message and make it something that will spread into the world, and how can we get the most people to eat less meat. They weren't really working or in any way advocating for individual transformation. They were advocating for changing other people, and it's these same people who are the ones that are now being seen to be abusing other people. So I think, again, it comes back to taking seriously the basic idea that the vegan movement, or the movement for transforming our relationship with animals, means transforming ourselves. And I cannot transform someone else. I can only transform myself. And so it's not so much, I think, about marketing. It's not about trying to craft brochures and flyers and movies and so forth that are going to make other people change. It's about actually working on myself so that I am actually changed. And then spontaneously and naturally, I will say the words in a way, or make the movies in a way, or write the books in a way, or whatever it is. And it'll come out in a way that furthers the movement. So it's really about each individual being empowered to bring their creative, unique gifts to the movement. And I think these larger movements, like the Humane Society and some of the other ones, were taking away from that in the sense that they were trying to see the whole movement as marketing and doing marketing analysis, and then just basically telling people, look, shut up and just hand out this literature or say these lines because we've done the marketing already, research, and we know you shouldn't use the word vegan, you should use the word vegetarian, you shouldn't say this, you should say that, and don't do this, and then you'll be effective. And so people are being taught just to shut up and do what they're told. It's like to create an army of willing propagandists for veganism. You just give the vegan propaganda and try to get it out there, and we have to do it fast because who knows, if we don't do it fast enough, the world will destroy itself. The whole thing, it's based on materialism. It's based on the very problem itself. It's continuing the same problem. So there's going to be abuse of other people. It's treating people who are not vegans as objects. We have to change them. We have to dominate. We have to be successful. I saw this when I was traveling with my brother through Christian missionary land, and they would try to save us. They saw they saw that I wasn't a Christian and they were a Christian, so they wanted to change. They wanted to save me. They wanted to baptize me so I would be a Christian. I felt like they were trying to dominate me and exploit me in a sense. And I think if we're vegans and we have that same mentality, we want to convert other people. If someone was trying to convert me, I'm going to try to defend myself. I don't want to have someone just look at me like I'm screwed up and I have to become like them. I mean, that's a form of violence. So the whole idea, I think, is what veganism is, it's love and kindness with no strings attached, just sharing our experience, showing that there's another way to live, and speaking the truth. Like Gandhi said, Satyagraha, when we speak the truth and live the truth, then we'll be kind and loving and respectful to each other and to everyone. And it's kind of appalling to see what some of the people have been doing in our movement. It's kind of shocking. It's kind of like disillusioning. But I love the word disillusioning. It's like disillusion. You get rid of the illusion. We have to do that. We have to get rid of the illusions. We have to look deeper and realize that each one of us, it's up to each one of us as individuals to do the best we can to live according to what veganism is, which is kindness and respect for everyone. And the main thing in animal agriculture is confining other beings and then sexually objectifying them and using them. And so these kinds of behaviors of confinement, of looking at the others with an eye of how can I market to you, how can I use you, how can I get something from you, that's been so deeply embedded in us from the time we're little kids that we need to all work on healing that in ourselves. And I think we should be, people should be accountable for their actions. But I don't think we should be too harsh on people. I mean, I think we have to be understanding, but also just understand that this is a movement of transformation, and each one of us is called to make that transformation as best we can for ourselves, and really to include the animals. In this whole Me Too movement, women are justifiably rising up and calling men out, for example. But it's also, female animals and male animals both are being horribly abused, and they should be included as well. And then I think it's also important to realize it's not just men. There was a big $1.5 million lawsuit by a woman against another woman who was sexually harassing her, a lesbian woman. So it's not men, women, it's just people in general, harassing or abusing other people. And then also I think it's important to respond in a mature way in these situations. And whatever that is, I don't want to give judgments about it, but to just realize that if I take offense at something, that that's also maybe part of the delusion that I'm in. I have to begin to see that other people are wounded and not take things so personally. And so it's all these things are the messy stuff we have to work with in our relationships. But from my point of view, the most important thing is to do the work on ourselves, to live this message, and then to bring the message in a grassroots way. I think the grassroots way is the key. When we have these large organizations, they're just breeding grounds for an organizational mindset of basically of exploitation, and it's a problem, but we just have to work with it as best we can, I think.
Thanks,
I don't know if that
Will,
helps,
so
but
much. That's yeah. Oh, it does. Yeah, and it's so true. We're all so programmed, and we have to question all our thoughts and as we go along. So I'm wondering, Lisa, if we have any questions. Are you there?
Yes, I am. And
Do
we
we have?
do have
All
a few
right.
questions, and I think actually Will has done
Okay,
such a wonderful
great.
job of answering some of them already. But a couple questions that came up on the live Facebook feed were about how to uh, be forgiving, how to um, treat ourselves with this compassion.
great. Okay, so the how-to in this, I think it has to do with practice. I think, practice, practice, practice. If we, if I want to play the piano, or if I want to learn to knit, or if I want to become a great tennis player, it's not going to happen just by reading books or watching videos. I have to practice. I have to get out there and put the racket in my hand and hit the ball around. That's how we learn, is through practice. So I think that's one of the reasons I wrote the World Peace Diet. Essentially, was to give practices, and also the new book on intuition. And we also have some guided meditations. There's a new one called World Peace Meditations that have actual practices that we can sort of learn. But the basic thing is, we have, all of us in our minds, we have programs that were injected into us from before we can remember, when we were in the womb, when we were 1 year old, 2 year old, 3 year olds. We were watching our parents. It's well understood that up until 7 years old, we're in a basically theta state, theta brain waves, which are very slow. It's like a hypnotic trance. We're just kind of, in the sense, we're watching, we're just soaking, we're like a sponge. We're just soaking in everything about our culture. We learn the language very quickly. We learn everything. We learn all the programs, and they're in there at a very deep level. And so now, as adults, very often we're acting in ways that are counterproductive. We get angry, we don't forgive people, we're judgmental, we're complaining, we're doing all these things that are causing conflict in our lives and also for ourselves. So I think the whole thing is to practice awareness, number one. So I would say the most important thing from my point of view is to have some time every single day where we just don't do anything. I take an hour every morning for sure. I never missed this in the last 45 years, of just sitting quietly and just listening. And the mind will go through whatever it goes through, and just keep bringing the mind back to this present moment and to the breathing, and train the attention. It's like, if I want to sit down at the piano and play songs and get carried away with the beauty of life musically, I need to practice. I need to work with the instrument. So in daily life, the instrument is our mind. We're raised in a society where we're not educated in any way to be sophisticated or skillful with our own mind. We're taught to be entertained and distracted all the time. So we're not taught as little kids to sit quietly, to listen internally, to get in touch with the subtleties of our inner feelings, to listen for the inner voice, to guide us in our life, to look deeply and feel deeply and connect deeply with the energy around us, or to what the future is bringing, or to what others are feeling. We're not taught any of that. We're taught the opposite of that. We're taught to be outer directed. So we really need to take it in our own hands, our own mind, our own attention, and take time every day to listen within and create space in our consciousness and experience that. And it may be uncomfortable, it may be boring, it may be frustrating, but to just keep returning our mind to our breathing, come back to our breathing during the day. And then there are practices I give, like in these books and so forth, and on these CDs, like the 4 Viharas, for example. The practice of the 4 Viharas, is a practice. It's really great, I think, for forgiveness. Vihara is an old Sanskrit word that means abode or home. It means home, basically. So the 4 abodes are love, compassion, joy, and peace. And so the idea is that we just spend some time every day, maybe 10 minutes, just feeling love and then exhaling love, and inhaling compassion and then exhaling compassion, then inhaling joy and inhaling peace and exhaling peace. And just see ourselves as a radiating center of light, of love, compassion, joy, and peace, and just build that up and feel that and experience that. Take the time every day to practice that and feel it. And then when we go through our day and someone says something that we feel is insulting, instead of just contracting and getting angry, we can send love, compassion. We can't do that if we don't practice. We won't do it. We'll just get carried away. We'll get upset. Somebody will cut us off in traffic. We'll yell at them or whatever. So the whole idea is to practice when we're not in the difficult time, so that when a difficulty comes up, we're riding. It's sort of like building up an account. We'll have some capital in the account that because we've been feeding into it every morning, where we just experience a sense of love, compassion, joy, and peace. And so a lot of it's about erasing the old tapes of competition and judgment and fear, and replacing them with a deeper sense. But it's important, I think, to do both. To, number one, to be quiet, and then number two, to actively replace the current thoughts that have been injected into us by our society of separation and of jealousy or of envy or of anger and so forth, the feelings that come up when people do things we don't like, or they have something we don't have, or all these things. We have these other feelings, and to consciously replace anger with a sense of understanding, or envy with a sense of joy that they have what they want, how wonderful that is. We can actively replace. It's like turning the channel on the TV. You have a channel on the TV you're watching. It's like horrible. You don't want to watch it. Change the channel. Take control of the channel of your own mind and change it, and switch over to the truth of your being, that what you are is an expression of infinite love and awareness of internal consciousness. That's what we are. But don't have it just be an empty thought. Feed it every morning by listening within and getting a glimpse of this. And it takes time, but it's like anything else. If we want to become proficient at something, we need to actually practice. And as we practice, I think we get more. There's no shortcut. I think we have to put in the work. And I remember when I was in Korea, they said, well, you got to spend 10 years every day just counting your breath. It's like, do that for 10 years, then come back and we'll decide what to do. So it's a matter of, I think, really of practice and discipline.
Well, thank you.
Will, what website could people go to find the Four Viharas and some of these other CDs?
Yeah, you can either go to, they both go to the same place, just Will Tuttle, willtuttle.com or worldpeacediet.com. They both pretty much go to the same set of web pages that have these books, the music, Madeline's art, our tour schedule, the training, the World Peace Diet Facilitator trainings. There's links there also to the Circle of Compassion and the Worldwide Prayer Circle for Animals. Please join us every day at noon. We have a little alarm that goes off, and we join together with people around the world, and we say the prayer, which is compassion encircles the earth for all beings everywhere, and build a field of consciousness of compassion, because I think this is where the real work is. It's in the outer work, but it's also really, I think, on the inner level. So if you go to those websites, any of those, I think they're all pretty much connected. And we have Facebook groups too and things as well. Yeah.
Lisa, do we have any other questions, or shall we do the closing prayer? How are we doing on time?
Actually, we do have a couple of questions, Will, if you're up for them. One of them is from Suzanne, who's with us here on the webinar right now, and she asks that she was wondering if you had any interactions, Will, with any people who are involved in the Me Too movement, and that she has felt what you expressed earlier, but hasn't known how to weave the plight of the animals into conversations about the Me Too movement. Any feedback on that?
I know I think that the whole thing with the Me Too movement, and I'm not a big expert on it, but I just feel that it's very important, obviously, that people who have been abused and who have been afraid to sort of come out of the closet about it, that they do that. Uh, However, I think we need to get beyond just that. I mean, like a woman, for example, say it's a woman who's been abused, um, harassed sexually or something, and she says, "Yeah, I've been abused, I've been harassed sexually." But if she is obviously, if she's every day, she's eating ice cream and buying cheese and so forth, and paying for the sexual abuse and enjoying it herself, enjoying the ice cream, and if someone says, because I've talked to women, I've said, this, if you have soy ice cream or coconut ice cream, it doesn't cause sexual abuse of cows. And they say, you know what? And these are people sometimes that have really been on the forefront of the before it was the Me Too movement, but of just better relationships with men and women. And they say, well, I just don't like the taste of those. I like real ice cream. I want to have real ice cream. And that's it. That's what they want. At the end of subject, they don't want to talk about it anymore. They like how it tastes, and they don't want. And so obviously, this is a problem because if I'm just concerned about my rights and I'm not concerned about others' rights, I mean that's demonic. That's really demonic, and that's what I mean. It's like I care about myself, but I don't care about you. That's what creates the whole vicious circle of violence, and the animals are the ones that always bear the brunt of our disconnectedness. So I think the best way, what's the best way to bring this about? I think just simply to tell our own story. If I can tell a story, say, I was, in many ways, I was the object of scorn, or I was the object of ridicule, or I was the object of harassment. And I think all of us have been in that position in some time in our lives, being bullied and so forth. I found it was very important for me to stand up for myself. But then I realized I have also been unconsciously harming others by taking out my wallet and paying for meat, dairy products, and eggs. So I realized that if I really wanted to be authentic in speaking out on behalf of people like me who have been abused, I need to also take responsibility and not do that to others. And so because of that, I've gone vegan. And I'm so glad I've done it. It's so great. It's really helped me go much deeper with it. And then just let go. Just make those statements and then let go. Don't try to change the person, but just be an authentic voice for a dimension, taking it to the next dimension, where I'm seeing that I need to be accountable myself. It's always so easy to blame other people. They're the problem, not me. To see how I'm accountable and to make an effort to expose to the world that I'm trying to do a better job here, and I'm really glad for the opportunity to do it, to work on myself and to be the change I'd like to see in the world. So I would just say, each one of us in our own way to find words for this kind of an approach, because that's not faulting the other person. It's just saying, I've discovered this for myself, and it's really great. So we plant a seed and then let go. And I think when we do that, we help the whole movement to expand, to realize that, the kind of sexual abuse that women are talking about receiving it, as bad as it is, it pales in comparison to what cows and chickens go through. I mean, the horrific, it's unimaginable, the abuse that these poor animals go through on a consistent basis. So we have to really broaden our experience of this and be more inclusive. And this is this is the frontier for our society. When we can do that, I think then we'll be worthy of the kind of kindness and equality and justice that we yearn for in our world.
Thank you, Will, for addressing that. And we had a comment here that isn't that a doorway in, that is to bridge the bullying, which is so prevalent in our society, with compassion to animals who are being bullied, like beyond belief.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's this chapter in the World Peace Diet that talks about how boys are so terribly bullied, really. I mean, girls too, but but this focusing on how boys go through this stage. And I read there's quite a literature about this, that boys are very often driven almost to either suicide or to terrible violence because they're so picked on. and they're forced to become hard and tough. But this is really an artifact of a herding culture that's based on dominating and exploiting animals and based on a role model of the hard, tough, disconnected male. This is the ideal. We have to be hard, tough, kind of like John Wayne mentality. And then, of course, females, girls, are seen as objects to be used, so they experience the horrible abuse that goes along with this. So both girls and boys are miserable in this society. But if we just try to solve it without addressing the underlying meat and dairy, that's really the problem. Is we're eating these foods and eating violence and causing it on a massive level, in the domination of the women and of the feminine. We have to get to that level. Otherwise, we're just treating the symptoms. We're not actually getting to the underlying cause.
And Will, we have one last question that's kind of a compilation of a few questions that have been asked on our Facebook page, which is, so does forgiving and looking within, how does that relate to taking action? Do they preclude each other? Is there a way that we can be forgiving and also take action to prevent cruelty to animals?
Yeah, I mean, I think, people look at us, they're always saying, God, I don't have, how do you do all you do? And, we're just giving, hundreds of lectures and traveling and writing and all this stuff. So I'm definitely not someone who would say, don't do something. I think, we're called to be active. But the thing is, action of itself is not necessarily a good thing. There's this old saying in the Buddhist tradition that a monkey may have a great sense of compassion when the monkey looks down from the tree and sees a fish drowning in the water. So the monkey goes down and takes the fish and brings the fish up to the safety of the tree. And this is a wonderful, compassionate act. But actually, the monkey is not actually helping the situation. The poor fish dies. So just acting without wisdom is not compassionate. So I think we're raised in a society that's very yang, and it's yang, that, the idea in the Chinese tradition of just, acting. The most important thing is to act and do something. And so, again, what I've been saying is the importance of yin, or the importance of getting inner guidance before we act, and the more powerful the yin, the more powerful the yang. The more powerful I can be receptive and connect with my inner wisdom, the more powerful the action will be. If I have a little yin, not much inner reflectiveness, then I'll have probably a pretty small yang, right? If I have a big, yin, I really take time to deeply try to get to the roots of things, then probably the action I take will be much more powerful. And so I think it is, action is important, but I think what we're finding and what I've seen in true life around is that the people who make the most effort to really soul search, to really authentically struggle within themselves to live what we're talking about, do, I think, plant the seeds most effectively in the outer world, ultimately. And so I don't think there's there's no shortcuts in this. Forgiveness, harmony, kindness, caring for others, this work is foundational. And then out of that, our action will be inspired. To let the action be inspired by this. And we don't know what it'll be, right? I mean, I think, we don't know what the future is going to bring in our life. I don't know what the future is going to bring in my life in the next, I don't know, because every day is new, and maybe some new insight will emerge from meditation, and I'll end up doing something else. And we're all like that. We're all, I think, on an adventure of this life. And if we're open an inner level, we can get an insight, or something can emerge that now it's time for me to start a cooking class, or to start a meetup, or it's time for me to talk to these people about this, or it's time for me to create a YouTube channel, or it's time for me to take a training and understand this. But how do we know what is an effective action if we don't really connect with our unique essence of who we are, what our strengths are, what our talents are, what our abilities are, and also to heal and forgive the problems that we have? Because I've seen a lot of animal rights activists they look on the outside like they're working to help protect animals, but very often they're still mad at their parents and they're just out there yelling and screaming because they really want to hit their father, but they're afraid to admit it, so they're out there doing something else. So we have to really, I think, this is the calling is um, self-examination and introspection, and out of that to be inspired to do something that the action will be, I think, much more authentic, and not to judge whether it's big or small. No one knows. Some people say, "Oh, this person did more than I did." You don't know that. We don't know what is more effective than something. 100 years from now, what looks really big today might be tiny, and what looks really small today may be huge. People will look back 100 years from now and say, "Oh, this was really what changed everything." And it might be something we can't even see today at all. We think it's nothing. It may be huge. So the key is just do what we're called to do, whatever it is, intuitively. So I think that's the beautiful message, is that we each have a precious gift, and not to compare ourselves with other people, but to find our gift and then to present it, and to be willing to change at any time if we feel that we've got a new insight that's emerging. And it's a challenge, but I think that's the beautiful thing. We can each be a field of liberation to those around us, but only if we liberate ourselves.
Well, thank you so much, Will, for addressing those questions and concerns, so many of them. And I also just want to take a moment to thank everybody who's joined us tonight, because we've had a wonderful responses on our Facebook page and also in the comments on the webinar itself. So it's a delight to have everybody here, and especially to Will for you sharing your wisdom with us. And I think that you have a closing prayer for us too.
I do? Oh, okay. I'm happy to have a closing prayer. Okay, so and I really want to thank you, Lisa, and you, Judy, and also Madeline, and everyone who's part of this, because I think together we understand that we are connected at a deeper level. So, yeah, okay, so I'll just take a moment and just a short statement that we just give thanks for this precious opportunity that we have of a human life, of this opportunity to grow in wisdom and compassion, and for our connection with the earth, with the beautiful celebration of life here, with all the expressions of life, with the animals who are flying and swimming and dancing on this earth, who are living their lives, with the whole human family, and with the wisdom and compassion and awareness that are shining always in our hearts. And we give thanks for all the human beings who are part of this circle of effort to awaken from the delusion of separateness and to realize our true nature. And we give thanks knowing that we are, all of us, part of an awakening on planet Earth of human consciousness out of the old delusion of separateness, domination, and exploitation, to the inner wisdom that we are expressions of one life, that we're here to celebrate our lives on this beautiful and abundant earth, and that we have a future that is beckoning, that a doorway that is open, a pathway that is open to a world where peace and freedom and justice are inviting, are possible, that this is our destiny, to awaken out of the delusion of separateness. And so we give thanks that we are all working together in the same way to realize this, each one of us in our own unique way. And so it is.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Will.
you.
That was a very moving, and I hope that everybody felt the sentiment inside their being as we received really a blessing from you, Will. That was very gracious. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank all of you so much. It's great that we can connect this way, and may we go forth, as I sometimes say, may we go forth and multiply the message, and spread. Let this message spread through every thought, word, and deed, and much love to all of you. Thanks so much. It's been great.
And again, thanks to everyone. We have this online gathering once a month, so you're welcome to register. I put the link in the chat box there, and you can join us each month. We have a spiritual conversation together about being vegan and the connections between veganism and spirituality. Judy and I host that. And then also, if you're curious about vegan spirituality and perhaps want to start a group of your own in your own community, you can find more information at veganspirituality.com. Thanks to everyone for joining us and for tuning in, and we hope you all have a lovely evening.
Great. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.